The Headless Man of Bolinger Cutoff. When you grow up in a place like Plain Dealing, Louisiana, you become fluent in boredom. Gabe, 17 and restless, knew every crack in the sidewalks, every faded signpost on his block, and every echo of legend that slid through town with the night air. And none was told more often, or with quieter dread, than the Headless Man on the tracks out by Bolinger Cutoff. Gabe didn't fear legends. He'd always figured grown-ups started the stories to keep kids away from the dangers they couldn't fence off old wells. A bend in the barns or that wayward slice of track winding through thick pine and brush between town and Bolinger. But on late summer nights as cicadas screamed and the air turned syrup thick, even his skepticism sometimes frayed. It had been a muggy Saturday, the kind where time collapses into a sleepy haze and only stupid ideas seem worthwhile. Gabe's two best friends were gone for the summer, his dad worked nights, and the house kept secrets in every shadow. Around midnight, Gabe lay in bed, scrolling on his phone, when a notification blinked across his screen. "Y'all hear someone out by the tracks tonight." Read a post in the local community group. Beneath it, replies piled up. "Don't mess with the Headless Man. Heard a scream near Bolinger an hour ago. Anybody see that light moving up and down?" Gabe smirked and shook his head. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe he just wanted to prove the old story was hollow. Or maybe deep down he needed to touch something strange, something that wasn't screens, chores, or the same tired faces. He slipped on his sneakers, texted his dad that he was going to do a late-night jog. He wouldn't see it until his break, and snuck out the side door. The moon was a tarnished coin above the trees. The air tasted metallic. Gabe jogged the familiar street, cut through the old field behind the Baptist church, and ducked through the barbed opening in the fence by the tracks. He'd walked these rails since he was a boy, always in daylight. At night, they seemed to stretch forever, the steel shining like river water in the fat moonlight. The pines pressed close on both sides, their needles hissing in the restless breeze. For the first time, he felt the absence of voices, how alone he really was, halfway between the edge of town and the nameless darkness that spread east. He found the tracks just where they bent toward Bolinger Cutoff, the fabled stretch. Legend said a man had made his home along these woods decades ago, a drifter or a runaway. They said he'd lay his head on the rails, listening for trains in the distance. No one knew if he'd meant to die, but one night he never got back up. The next morning, a few men from town found his body on the cold iron, blood pooled and face gone. Some said they never recovered the head. Some said it still turned up at the river or the fields during planting. Others swore the man kept searching every night, desperate to reunite with that missing part of himself and furious at any living soul who dared to meet his ruined eyes. Gabe stopped, the story looping through his brain. "Just an old tale," he whispered, flicking his flashlight along the tracks. He walked farther, the ties creaking beneath his weight. Fog pooled in low dips, shifting in ghostly shapes across the rusted rails. Small animals darted out of sight, but Gabe pressed on. A sudden flicker and his flashlight dimmed. He banged it against his leg light, snapped back, though weaker. Then he saw a pale glow up ahead, drifting slowly, impossibly smooth, like someone holding a lantern just above the ground. The air chilled. Gabe swallowed, half tempted to turn back, but the glow fascinated him. He kept walking, heart pounding. His mind searched for rational answers. Fireflies, car lights, a trick of the moon. With each step the light seemed to retreat, keeping the same careful distance. He paused at an old crosstie covered in lichen. Gabe, mostly to calm his nerves, laughed, "Hey, you lost your head or something." The woods fell silent. The light flickered out. Gabe's blood ran cold. The only sound was the wind pressing through the pines. Suddenly, behind him, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps on gravel. He spun, flashlight trembling. Nothing. But the air felt heavier, as if someone stood just out of sight. "Joke's over," Gabe said, voice too loud. He stepped backward, tripping on the tie, and tumbled to the ground, scraping his palms. The flashlight spun from his hand, sputtering out. He lay still, afraid to move. At the edge of his hearing, he caught a soft, wet sound like dragging cloth or slow, shambling steps. "Not real," he muttered, but his words had no conviction. In the dark, shapes began to congregate in the fog. A figure took form in the center of the tracks, backlit by the moon. Tall and impossibly thin, clothes hanging in tatters, shoulders hunched as if cradling a great weight. Where the head should have been, only smoke and shadow twisted, never quite resolving into anything solid. The figure bent impossibly, searching the ground, hands feeling along the rusted rails. Its movements were desperate, feverish. For an agonizing minute it didn't seem to notice Gabe. Then horrifyingly it stopped, as though catching his scent. Even without a face, Gabe felt it staring straight at him. He willed himself to breathe quietly, not move, not even blink. The legend came back, every warning: if he catches you staring, you're marked. The figure lurched forward, scraping over the ties. In the moonlight, Gabe saw jagged edges where a head might have joined the neck. Nothing but wet darkness, gaping and raw. The face tilted, sniffing, almost listening. Gabe tried to pull his feet under him. Old advice: don't run, don't look back, don't answer if he calls your name, whirled through his mind. He crab-walked back, keeping his eyes downcast, heartbeat crashing in his ears. The headless man reached the spot where Gabe had fallen, frozen for a moment as if scenting the blood on the track from his scraped hands. Gabe's breath caught. He fought the urge to cry out or bolt. A guttural noise welled up from the thing like a sob, or a moan, or the wind moaning through a broken bottle. It stumbled on, hands stretched before it, passing within feet of Gabe, who stayed absolutely still. It moved past, out onto the tracks, disappearing into the swirling fog. As it went, the lantern light reappeared, bobbing with each impossible stride. For a moment Gabe thought he heard gasping breath, or a muffled word, someone calling for help or mercy. He waited, trembling, until the light faded entirely and even the small animals found their courage to move again. It took a long time before Gabe could get to his feet, find his battered flashlight, and limp back toward town. Every root, every shadow felt like a trap waiting to snap at his ankles. He didn't see the headless man again that night, but in every side glance, every whispered sigh of wind, he felt pursued. He told no one what really happened. All he managed at home was, "I tripped by the tracks, that's all." His dad only looked at him a long time, lifting one eyebrow, and said nothing. That week, the strangeness lingered. Gabe's phone flickered to static near the old field. A deep gash appeared on his bedroom window's wood trim, as though gouged by a heavy nail. At night, in the silence between heartbeats, he sometimes heard dragging steps in the gravel outside his window. He couldn't stay away from the tracks. No matter how much he tried, something called to him. One night, sleep-deprived, he dreamed he was back at the rails. The fog was thick, the lantern's glow was closer, and behind it the headless man's body bent impossibly low, hands outstretched. This time, the figure didn't pass him by. It knelt at Gabe's feet, its ruined neck angled as if listening. And Gabe woke, heart racing, cold sweat soaking the sheets. Desperate for answers, he visited the town's small library. Digging into old records, he found a yellowed article about a railroad worker found dead on the tracks decades ago. No identification, no family, buried in a grave with a rail spike for a marker. Beneath the photo, in faded ink, someone had scrawled, "DON to look back." The nightmares grew more insistent. Sometimes outside his window, Gabe caught a flash of pale light moving among the trees. Once, returning home after dark, he saw, just for an instant, a shape standing at the base of his driveway, thin, shrouded neck, dripping with darkness. When he blinked, it was gone, but the temperature in his room never quite returned to normal. On Halloween, feeling drawn by fear and fascination, Gabe crept back to the tracks alone. Moonless dark pressed against his skin. He left an offering, a battered old cap and a scrap of paper. "You are remembered. Please rest." The chill in the air thickened. The fog shifted. He saw the glow, closer than ever, moving straight toward him. This time, the figure stopped 5 feet away. Gabe dared a glance upward, and for a heartbeat, he saw his own terrified face reflected in the seeping void where the head should have been. He shut his eyes and prayed, and in the silence heard not a curse but a whimper. The cold passed through him. When he finally opened his eyes, he was alone. From that night on, the legend had a new warning. Kids still dared each other to walk the tracks, but now they whispered that if the headless man ever noticed you watching, he'd follow you home, a cold light bobbing in the fog, a scraping. At your window, a soft whisper in your ear as you drift off to sleep. "I'm still searching. Don't let me see you looking."